Yeah, how do we take back control of data? This is, one of the biggest topics that we're hearing about this year. It's on everyone's lips. Cookie deprecation is coming. How do we really make the most of the data that we have? And I'm delighted to be joined by three people from different aspects of the industry who can share their insights on this. I will throw to you to introduce yourselves first. Olha, welcome.
Is it ladies first?
Please.
Yeah, I hope my microphone works better than yours, John. Have you tested it?
Is it working?
Is it?
We good? Can you hear me okay?
Maybe that's the acoustics. Yeah, happy to be here. My name is Olha. I work at Sigma Software. I'm vice president of a tech business division. So we work, our portfolio is major players in digital advertising.
Eloi, welcome.
Hi, I'm Eloi Casali. I'm the head of media at Kingfisher, which is the parent company for Screwfix and B&Q in the UK and some other DIY businesses across Europe.
And Giovanni, welcome.
Gio here. I'm a director of digital marketing technology at Kenvue, which was previously Johnson & Johnson Consumer Health. And I lead a team of 120, roughly, marketing technologists and product owners and developers. And we're responsible for all web, CRM, apps, e-commerce, and marketing automation technologies for EMEA.
Great. Well, thank you all very much for joining us today. I think I want to set the scene a little bit first and hear from you all on what the major challenges are in terms of data collection and your usage of data. Olha, I'll throw that to you first.
I would say lost trust. And certainly, there are a lot of other different challenges. We can set priorities, but I think that looking at the conferences and articles, a lot of conversations are going around technology and how technology will come in and save and recover the capabilities of what we are able to do now, but we most likely not going to do it next year. And I think this is driving away attention from the core reasons why we have to deal with it. And there is a history behind it. Why this, and it didn't happen yesterday. We knew that cookies deprecation are coming, and now it's just becoming more obvious because Google is big, and it's like 60% average around the world of users of Chrome. Now we can actually, a lot of trees are burning. But I think that just being blind and sitting there to wait that technology will come and fix it is putting us to the weak spot. And we cannot just ignore the fact that the trust is lost, and the challenge is how the whole industry will recover it. And it's a creative task to do. There is no easy button for that, because trust is like ongoing relationship between each players. And I was curious, and there is actually a research which was done by Eloi, and around 70% of people associate publisher reputation with trust, and 60% of people at the same time would be willing to share more information about themselves in exchange of personalized benefits and some discounts or personalized experience, which is altogether building a very unique, interesting opportunity. But it's important to understand that if the first block is missing, then there is no second block. So if there is no trust, then there is no user data that you might be doing. So I think that right now, it was also important to if you follow the conferences, if we make sure that technology works out well, then it's going to be not seen by the user, but the privacy would be followed, it's going to be fine. But I hope that we just build it better this time.
Yeah, is that something that you're seeing as well, Eloi, in terms of this, the value exchange, the trust levels and stuff? Is that the same thing for you?
Yeah, I mean, trust is a huge topic in our world at the moment, with all the topics of privacy and consumers pushing back on tracking, but also wanting the personalized messages and not having a generic message in front of them. And that's kind of an interesting dynamic that consumers have. And it really highlights the fact that as a consumer, you want everything, right? You're the consumer, you're king, and that's what we need to deliver to them. But of course, having that privacy lens on top of everything drives a lot more trust in your brand. So on your question, I think that there are three very distinct challenges there, which is collecting the data in a privacy-safe way, in a way that informs your users how you're going to be using that data in order to talk to them. There's then storing and having that data on hold in your systems, which is not just something that sits there, but something that needs to be maintained all the time. So with all these opportunities means new workers, new talents coming into your business and actually working on these topics. And when you get to activation, I almost find that that's the exciting and, dare I say it, easier part of the equation. There are always going to be challenges and differences in match rates and things like that, but actually as a marketer, that's where I get super excited about getting everybody into the room saying, right, what do we have, how many people, what can we say to them, in what context? That becomes the really fun bit. But actually a lot of the work that happens before that is absolutely fundamental in terms of collecting that data, making sure you've got the right permissions, storing it, and making sure that all of that is updated over time.
Yeah, Gio, from your point of view, what are the major challenges we're seeing at the moment?
Yeah, I think I want to take, there is probably like 100 points of view that you can take to answer the question from privacy, legal, depends on what function you ask. But from a brand management, pure brand management perspective, I think there is a tendency, there is a strategy problem where I've seen brands get mandated, oh, you need to collect more first-party data, and that mandate just trickles down in the organization, and then you leave that strategic piece to a junior brand manager, and your junior brand manager, what is he going to do? He's going to go to the agency, and he's going to go oh, I've been told I need to collect more first-party data. Can you help me do that? And then the agency is all right, we're going to put a banner on the website, and we're going to, create an amazing newsletter, or a raffle, right? And then obviously the scale that you get with those sorts of initiatives is extremely small. So if there's brand managers in the room, if you get that mandate, just punch it back up, and try to challenge that and try to find scalable opportunities. And oftentimes the scalable opportunities, they come with business model changes. If you look at the most successful, from a brand perspective, from an advertiser perspective, most successful brands that are really good at collecting and activating first-party data are either digital-first companies or brands that reinvented themselves around the digital business model. This is a business model change. It's not a raffle. It's a business model change. So you look at Adidas, you look at Nike, you look at Zalando, Connect Retail. These are people that reinvented their business model, right? So I think that's probably the major challenge is strategic piece. And then, say from a MarTech perspective, certainly there is a lot of challenges when it comes to the identification of people, deterministically, probabilistically. It becomes harder and harder, right? And the power is skewed to the consumer from a consent perspective, but also to walled gardens as well. They're the ones that come up with ATT, with hide my email, and stuff like that make the scalability piece of first-party data really complicated to do. So that's stuff that we got to work through.
Yeah, I think, then on scale, it's a really interesting point, and it's one of the questions that always arises around the use and application of first-party data. Eloi, in terms of how to scale and how to get really extracting the full value from that data, how are you seeing it at the moment?
It's a constant journey. It's a constant battle. I definitely get the mandate coming from up top on first-party data usage. We try and push back on this and say, X% of our media is actually activated against a first-party data point of whatever kind it may be, and that's kind of the target we try to aim for. So yes, there is get more first-party data in, but that's a huge journey in itself from consent banners to absolutely everything you do on your website to capture people. There is a huge amount of value, obviously, into it. When I activate first-party segments, they usually outperform Google's in market, Facebook's in market by a factor of anything from 5x upwards. So, the upside is huge, absolutely huge, especially, when I compare my small data set with Google's. That's a huge difference, and it makes you feel good about yourself. But we have we have across Europe, we've got about 1 billion visits annually, and capturing all of that, storing it in the right time, it's a challenge. But we've managed to grow our addressable customer database by about 20 million customers since the pandemic. So to answer your question, I think there's two parts of that. There's scaling the inbound first-party data that's coming in, and we're an omni-channel business who are super reliant on stores and much bigger in stores than online. So that creates a challenge in itself, because I'm not going to drop a cookie into the pocket of every single person that walks through my retail store, but I'm going to have to get them to use my club card. And that becomes a challenge in itself. So there's challenges in data coming into your business, and then the challenges about pushing data back out of your business into the wild, into the market to capture more customers. I mean, I rely on tech. I rely on tech a lot, and I used to rely a lot on Google, and that's going to start going away. There are lots of people out there. We use a combination of tools like CDPs and then things like LiveRamp to then push that back into the market. But it's down to the technology itself, and then you get to judge the technology based on things like match rates or the actual effectiveness of the media that is being put back out there.
Yeah, Olha, from your point of view, in terms of the question of scale and the usage and really extracting that full value, how are you seeing that?
I totally agree with Eloi, and I love the statement, I rely on tech. I would reiterate on that a little bit later. But we are building a garden, from the publisher perspective. And there are a couple of flowers, and there are some bees, but you put more flowers, and there are some butterflies, and then some other guys might come, maybe lizards too, and then they just would put in more and more. You have a chance to actually grow it, and by that I mean you can have a vertical growth, you can have a horizontal growth, which is adding more people and adding more data around those people. And that comes a lot with just tons of work, and that's a long process, how you create. But when I was thinking, what is the strategy, is that you need to create ongoingly, never stop, reasons why tomorrow this person would stay with you. Because for first-party data is actually the same as, there is always a risk as we have with third-party data, because third-party data is historical. It's just whoever you were, and I always just shocked to check my profile. I see tons of interesting stuff there. But the person who registered with you 1 month ago or 3 months ago might be a very different person today. So you need to be in constant communication with your users to make sure that you retain, you understand who they are today, and then create an opportunity and a reason for them to share more. For example, you can do workshops, you can do a test drive, you can create a reason why this person would share more details with you, and show if they have intent. Maybe they not. Maybe searching through the website is easy. Having a commitment is absolutely a different thing, and there is a big gap between those two states as a personality.
Yeah, I think that communication piece is really, really interesting, and one of the powers of first-party data lies in that. Probably also lies in collaboration, I'd say. What tech are we seeing that's really helping the industry collaborate to really come together to make the most of the first-party data? Gio, data clean rooms, the kind of technology we're seeing, how is that affecting your day-to-day?
Yeah, I mean, certainly clean rooms are a big opportunity for collaboration across the industry. They're kind of similar to a DMP from a certain point of view. Where I see some brands struggle, so the big power for me of clean rooms, you unlock the big power when you have really a fair exchange of, I put in my first-party data, you put in your first-party data, and we have a common business goal to achieve. So building a partnership between, for example, a very large DTC-only player and a very successful brick-and-mortar retailer, that's where you unlock some, real new business models, right? And I think clean rooms help with that a lot. Where I see brands struggle, in my perspective, my opinion, is that oftentimes, especially in the FMCG, CPG space, having first-party data, having a reason to collect first-party data is complicated in the beginning, right? So a lot a lot of brands, they sit at the negotiating table with, for example, retailers, but they don't have any first-party data to offer. So they use a clean room like they would use a DMP, like to put it very simply. So they go like, okay, now retailer, strike a deal, pay you a bunch of money, put your data in a clean room, privacy safe, I slice and dice it, and then I onboard it and activate it if I can. But I think the real, the real power is, when two entities have a business goal in mind, and they come to the to the table with something to offer. That's my point of view.
Yeah, is that the same as what you're seeing, Eloi?
Yeah. So on your initial question, we use a mix of, as I said, we've got store data, we've got online data, and we try and bring that together through a CDP, and then push those segments back out into the market via different means, methods, depending on the vendors, the media vendors we work with. So we haven't made a huge amount of work with data clean rooms, although that sounds like very black box, so you're making me a little bit scared here. But it's there are lots of promises in this area, and I want to see a lot more work in that area, but our focus is very much on bringing that customer data together. And one of the exercises that we've done internally, which has been a fundamental game changer, is to drive through the entire organization, and I mean the entire organization, the value of a customer data point. What's the value to us of having a customer record when we push that back into media? These are things that within marketing departments, we can quantify these things. We can do big extrapolations and understand exactly that if we bring, a customer we record, it's worth X amount of money. That's really important to drive the rest of the business, the non-marketing sides of the business, to push them to practices where they're actually also going to start collecting first-party data for you guys. So I mentioned things like club cards and things like that, but even people just walking into the stores, you're not going to obviously have a store assistant jump on them and ask them for their email, but how can you create that value that we were talking about initially to get them to buy into your program? And I think initially when all of this started, it was, newsletters and things like that, but there is a fundamental difference in the quality of a signal coming from somebody who's signed up to a newsletter to somebody who's browsed your site, that section, that section, that section, that section, and you can assign different values to the different customers that you're bringing through to really paint the picture to your business that there's a huge amount of value in capturing all of this.
Yeah, Olha, what tech are you seeing as defining this collaborative data future?
Yeah, on data clean rooms separately, I think that's operating personal data is risky, so that takes away the pressure of this taking this risk, and it's not anymore don't touch, only look. So now you can touch, not everything, but but I think that I look at collaboration as a little bit wider thing, because I think that a successful strategy for everyone would be a portfolio approach. And it just using data clean rooms, it's fine, but you would need more. You need to know intent and use tools for intent. You will need different layers of technology just to make sure that you have full coverage. And in that I see a good opportunity for different players in a tech to collaborate and act as a single team, actually.
Yeah, I think from all of you, it seems the collaboration is going to be key to really making the most of this. I want to go back to how we started on a bit of a discussion about trust and how we really balance the need for user privacy, and we're in a privacy-first world, and how we balance that with the effective targeting that businesses rely on that you need. So how do you protect both your users' data and your own brand with first-party data?
I can continue on this one. Thinking about this question, I think it's learning and transparency in a lot of different aspects, but there should be a focus, refocus from the monetization-centric model, where I'm the publisher, I'm just sending here, trafficking my ads, just you see what I give you, and it turns away people, because they understand they're just random target of whatever ads there are, like they're fed with those ads, and there should be a shift to a user-centric model where, like, audience first, I understand you, you understand what I'm doing, which is, like, I'm here to explain to you why I'm doing certain things. For example, like, I'm collecting your data, and in exchange, I would give you this. I will give you personalized experience. I might want to send you ads that are not random. Would you like to see them or not? And that's making it clear what's happening, because people, like, when they don't know anything, that creates, like, dialogue. Oh, okay, that scary website is tricky, collects my data, then sells it on black market. So I think that's a long educational process, and let's see how this is going to be built.
Yeah, Eloi, how do you, from the Kingfisher point of view, how do you protect, both your users and your own brand?
Yeah, I don't necessarily see them as things that are opposed, like, protecting user privacy and having less data than we used to because GDPR, cookie banners, and, you can't just look at the past and say, I've got less than I used to, how am I going to change that again? That's the past, it's moved on, and we're going to go in a direction that's going to be a lot worse. Well, worse, speaking in terms of volume of cookies and things like that, right? And I don't want to go back to a stage where, we're spraying and praying advertising. I believe a lot more in advertising, and I think it should be precise, and that's where consumers get more value out of advertising. But I don't see privacy and results as opposing things. I see them almost as communicating vases or communicating vessels. You've got to do privacy because that's the law. You can't not do it. And then off the back of that, you can do really good comms with the data that you actually have. And the data that you don't have, you just need to talk to them in a slightly different way. But I can flip that on its head a little bit to say there are huge risks in not being privacy focused or not having a super focused attention on customer data. We've seen this like tons of times in the past, and nowadays consumers are expecting to have their privacy respected, but also their data not used and passed on to various companies and things like that. I was at a different event a couple of months ago where we actually saw a study by Ipsos where they were showing that if you have a positive privacy experience with a brand, your brand choice goes up by 18%. And that's purely by having a nice privacy thing. So that's just being open and being kind of super clear on your cookie banners and your pieces like that. I hate those cookie banners with tons of tiny amounts of text and stuff like that. Just be clear. Put a picture of a cookie on it and say, we're dropping cookies so that we can deliver more effectively things to you that you want and not spam you with generic things. And that's the sort of language that customers need to have. The problem is that privacy nowadays is very much in kind of a legal and tech department, and I mean, I'm sorry if there are people from legal or tech, but these are not necessarily people who are customer front-facing the customer or customer-focused, definitely. So all of that gets written in, these are the requirements that I have to write it in. But if you try and turn that and turn it into an ad creative or something like that, then cookie consent rates really go up.
Gio, you come from this from a healthcare background, basically, and that's area really heavy on sensitive data. How are you seeing the kind of the privacy first world and how you can really protect your brands in that area?
Yeah, I think from a tech perspective, certainly there's a lot of, from a tech perspective, in a highly fragmented organization like a P&G, my previous company, now Kenvue, there's tons of brands and they're like dispersed, right? So when it comes to using first-party data, it's very hard from a technology perspective to guarantee that your brand manager in Germany is not just downloading a CSV file of email addresses from your CDP and just copy-pasting Facebook audiences, right? So it comes from the challenge, the big challenge that we have is from let's say tech word would be observability perspective. So to make sure that we build, and we did this very successfully at P&G, we built a system, like an API-based system to treat like the flow. I mean, we have a lot of people from ad tech here, right? So ad tech, the ad tech supply chain is very complicated, right? But even within a company, within a big company with a lot of brands, our supply chain internally is also equally complicated. So putting together a system that is API-based through which you can guarantee that if a person is submitting a GDPR right to access, modify, or delete, that request is propagated around the 50 silos of data that you have, down to the Facebook audience in Germany from that little guy that did it. That's really complicated to do, and something that we as that's why we need to invest more in tech, right? Because as companies, because we need to ensure that happens, right?
Yeah, we are rapidly coming to a close. I just want to throw out one more question before we finish. How can publishers use the data that they have, this first-party data, to really cement this new position of strength that they could find themselves in after cookie deprecation? What would be your one piece of advice for them? I'll start with you, Olha.
Right. I think that's like, I like this word cement. It's like, be careful with what you cement. So I think that don't expect that what you already have, if you're a publisher and you already have some data, that it's the right data. You really need to understand what it is about and have a strategy around it. And not having strategy will bring you nowhere. So start today, understand the new technology. It's gonna take time to understand clean rooms, sandbox is open for testing. Go check out there. Don't expect technology would solve everything and fix it for you. Fix things for yourself. And this active position, the opportunity to have these powerful positions where you are not just being sent an ad, but actually you have the data and people would come to you to get an ad sent to you, to the people that they are looking for. It's like two different positions. And it's like, I don't know if you have this game with chairs, like music playing and it stops and...
Musical chairs, yeah.
So music is playing now. They need to make sure they take the chair and get the powerful position.
Excellent, thank you. Eloi, what would be your one piece of advice?
I'm sorry, I got two. I know we're overrunning, but there's a break after. The first one is that the way I tend to look at tech and tell my teams to look at tech is that it's usually a tool or a toy. If it's a tool, it pays for itself. If it's a toy, it doesn't pay for itself. And that payback can either be in media activation, the pure ROAS and all of that stuff, or it could be in time saved. And time saved is a massive one, by the way, because of all these processes that we have internally. If you put something in front of me that can save X amount of man hours, can redeploy that in strategy or in anything else, that's fantastic. The second piece of advice I'm going to give, this has worked well for me in the past few months, or for a vendor, is I'm not going to tell you how to, what are the next things to look at in ad tech and stuff like that, but if you're a vendor and you want to work with a company, with a big company, write a generic DPIA and write a very generic data flow diagram of where everything goes. Because when we work in these massive companies, these are the things that we have to work with legal, with privacy, with IT to describe literally everywhere the data goes, who could access it, what happens if a guy in that company leaves one day and has a different email. That in itself, for me, in my job, is a lifesaver, because otherwise I'll have to go back and forth with you for about 3 months trying to figure that out. So I think if a lot of tech companies out there had these things already created, and I'm working with some of them who have done that as a result, it's massively helpful and saves a lot of time.
Thank you. Gio, what's your piece of advice that you would have for the industry?
I would say, probably it has been said before today, it will be said tomorrow, but go back to the basics. I think there is a really nice book that has been around for 10 years that is called How Brands Grow, right, from Byron Sharp. When you go back to the basics, you realize that ultimately brands grow, building on mental availability, physical availability, the largest categories possible, and distinctive brand assets, right? So I think we as, I don't want to say, I have a bad mental image of it, but we as, let's say, an industry, as marketeers, we've been overly obsessed with audiencing, targeting, and so on and so forth. Now, the reality is when you go back to the basics, and obviously the demise of third-party cookies puts, a problem from that perspective, from an addressability perspective, targeting perspective, personalization perspective. Then you realize when you go back to the basics, that takes a little bit of a weight off your shoulder as a marketeer, figuring out that ultimately then you can maybe focus more on reach, and that's okay. You can focus more on contextual, and that's okay. So that's the first piece of advice, read the book. And then, to be honest, it's a really, I read it like 10 years ago when I was at university in Australia, and then it's coming up recently in the org again, and I'm like, oh yeah, sure, well, of course. And then I know that we're over time, so probably I'll stop here.
You've come a long way to be here, so please, you can have a second point, don't worry.
No, I would say if I had $1 to bet, I would bet on topics. I know it's unpopular here, but I would bet it on topics API.
Interesting. Well, on that note, we'll finish, but thank you all very much for your time and for listening. Gio, Olha, thank you for coming so far. Eloi, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.